Hello and welcome to Football Daily, where today we're looking at 10 players who absolutely despised their manager. Number 10, Iker Casillas and Jose Mourinho. After a stellar spell at Inter Milan, Jose Mourinho was the world's most coveted manager, and, as usual, Real Madrid decided they had to have him. However, the special one's 3 years in Spain only brought him one title, one Copa del Rey, and a Super Cup, as he had to contend with interference from players and club president. In particular, Mourinho sidelined Iker Casillas, relegating the club legend to cup keeper and favouring Diego Lopez instead. Always suspected of loving himself a little bit more than the team, Mourinho's dislike for Casillas turned many fans against him, as well as Sergio Ramos and even countryman Cristiano Ronaldo. The Portuguese had no choice but to leave for his beloved Chelsea, while Casillas stayed and captained Madrid another 2 years, winning his third Champions League trophy. 1-0 San Iker. 9. David Beckham and Alex Ferguson. Unlike some of the pairs to feature on this list, David Beckham and Alex Ferguson had a very successful partnership at Man United. The duo won 6 titles and the Champions League in 11 years together, and Beckham even came in second for the 1999 Ballon d'Or, ahead of Zidane and Ronaldo. But as Beckham's fame increased, the relationship became strained. Ferguson disapproved of Beckham's marriage to former Spice Girl Victoria Adams, and the player also dragged his heels in contract negotiations as he asked for a share of his image rights. Matters came to a head in 2003 when, after an FA Cup loss to Arsenal, Ferguson kicked a boot at Beckham, hitting him in the head and giving him a cut which required stitches. That summer, Barcelona agreed a fee with United for Becks, but he eventually joined Real Madrid for €35 million. Ferguson later said that the England star thought that he was bigger than the manager, and that was the death knell for him. 8. Mario Balotelli and Brendan Rodgers. A £16 million gamble the summer Liverpool lost Luis Suarez, Mario Balotelli had a disastrous spell with the Reds. Quickly sidelined by Brendan Rodgers, he scored 4 goals in 28 games, also earning himself a £25,000 fine for an anti-Semitic post on social media. Balotelli blamed Rodgers' tactics and objected to being asked to defend at corners, while Rodgers admitted that he had struggled to connect with the Italian. But in 2017, when both coach and player had left Anfield, Rodgers took a shot at his former charge, joking that the striker was the best player he ever coached. Balo responded in kind, mocking the Northern Irishman on Twitter. But perhaps the divorce was for the best. Balotelli, after a brief return to Milan, put together his best scoring season so far under Lucien Favre at Nice, while Rodgers took over Celtic and won the title, with what looks likely to be an unbeaten campaign and a record points total. 7. Frank Lampard and Andre Villas-Boas. Chelsea took a big swing when they recruited manager Andre Villas-Boas in 2011. The Portuguese had just won the league undefeated with Porto, and Chelsea paid his old club £13.3 million in compensation, shelling out another £5 million a year in wages. Villas-Boas was asked to rejuvenate the squad, with core players like John Terry and Frank Lampard heading into their 30s. He benched Lampard immediately, and the Englishman stirred up the squad against the coach, with Nicola Anelka and Alex handing in transfer requests. By February, Chelsea had already lost 6 Premier League games and suffered a damaging 3-1 defeat in the first leg of their Champions League tie against Napoli. When AVB was fired, he reportedly left the Chelsea training ground in tears, with most of the players refusing even to say goodbye. Roberto Di Matteo took over and led the team to an unlikely Champions League trophy, while Villas-Boas picked up a severance cheque for £10 million. 6. Carlos Tevez and Roberto Mancini. The 2011-12 season is now remembered by Man City fans as a high point in the history of the club, marking their first title in 44 years. But the wheels almost came off the wagon a month into the campaign. During a 2-0 Champions League defeat to Bayern Munich, Roberto Mancini asked Carlos Tevez to warm up, but the Argentinian simply refused, unhappy with his substitute role and the rejection of 2 transfer requests that summer. Mancini's bewilderment soon turned to anger, and he told the press that Tevez was finished at City, while the player flew back to Argentina, spending the next 5 months playing golf. Unfortunately for Tevez, City refused to back down, and he returned in February, apologising for his actions and accepting a hefty fine. He ended up scoring a hat-trick in a 6-1 battering of Norwich, marking the achievement with a golf swing celebration. Player and manager agreed to put their differences behind them as the Sky Blues lifted the Premier League trophy, but both were gone within a year. 5. Leon Clarke and Paolo Di Canio. Famously fiery, Paolo Di Canio could start a fight in an empty room, if that room was in the left wing of the house. The Roman is notorious for his fascist views and short temper, once receiving an 11-game ban for pushing over a referee. After retiring in his homeland, Di Canio began his managerial career at Swindon Town, but within 3 months he was on the back pages again. A League Cup defeat to Southampton sparked a disagreement between striker Leon Clarke and Di Canio's fitness coach, and the Italian intervened, with player and manager shoving each other and having to be separated in the tunnel before a full-blown fistfight broke out. After under 3 weeks at the club, Clarke was transfer listed and never played for Swindon again. Di Canio remained for another 11 months as the team spiralled into financial crisis, even offering to spend £30,000 of his own money on loan players before eventually resigning. 4. Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Louis van Gaal. When Zlatan Ibrahimovic was coming up at Ajax, the club was managed by Ronald Koeman and had Louis van Gaal as its director. Zlatan hated Van Gaal, who used to lecture the players on tactics, and when the Dutchman quizzed the Swede one day on his defensive responsibilities, Ibra snapped. The lanky striker explained that Marco van Basten's tactical ideas differed from LVG's, and he ended by saying, "Who should I listen to, Van Basten, who's a legend, or Van Gaal?" Unsurprisingly, their relationship never recovered, and Ibra later called Van Gaal a dictator without any sense of humour. However, their long-standing beef didn't stop Van Gaal trying to sign the forward during his spell at Man United, but Zlatan refused, only arriving at Old Trafford after Mourinho had taken the helm. 3. Roy Keane and Mick McCarthy. Never one to shy away from a fight, Roy Keane's many grudges could fill this list, but his worst moment was while on international duty in 2002. The Republic of Ireland squad was in Japan to prepare for the World Cup, but Keane felt that the setup was a little unprofessional. The team took economy class flights while the coaching staff were in first class, and the players were left eating sandwiches before one game because their usual pre-match food was unavailable. Keane blamed these shortcomings on manager Mick McCarthy in a newspaper interview, adding that he felt the team was tactically inept. The pair faced off in the dressing room, with McCarthy accusing Keane of faking injuries, leading the United legend to call his boss a and to say, "I didn't rate you as a player, I don't rate you as a manager, and I don't rate you as a person." He was sent home, and despite the intervention of the Irish Prime Minister, a peace agreement was not found. Ireland exited the World Cup in the second round. 2. Adam Ljajic and Delio Rossi. Now at Torino, Bosnian forward Adam Ljajic was at Fiorentina back in 2012 when he had an unusual run-in with coach Delio Rossi. During a Serie A game against Novara, Rossi subbed off Ljajic, prompting sarcastic applause from the player. Rossi went mental, throwing himself at Ljajic and slapping the then 20-year-old in the face. Club officials had to wrestle the manager away, and he was sacked after the match. Rossi claimed that the youngster had said, "Go back to your mother's." Pretty spicy stuff, though other players on the bench said they heard nothing. The supporters also got involved, aiming racial abuse at Ljajic as he went down the tunnel and earning Fiorentina a £12,000 fine. Rossi later apologised for losing his cool and somehow got a job at Sampdoria shortly afterwards. 1. France team and Raymond Domenech. The excitement of the World Cup brings out the best in some people and the worst in others. Perhaps the tournament's most famous meltdown came in 2010, when France, beaten finalists 4 years earlier, decided to have a second revolution. Led by Patrice Evra and Nicolas Anelka, the players went on strike in protest at the leadership of manager Raymond Domenech, locking themselves in the team bus. They drew with Uruguay and lost to Mexico in their first 2 games, and while Evra had a public row with one of the coaching staff, Anelka called Domenech a son of a getting himself an early flight home. The players wrote a statement protesting the decision, resulting in the odd scene of Domenech reading a letter to the press detailing his own shortcomings. France lost their final group game 2-1 to South Africa. Domenech lost his job, and Anelka was handed an 18-match ban. A disgrace all round. So we hope you enjoyed that, and if you want to check out more of our videos, then click here on screen. Don't forget to like and subscribe and get on our Snapchat and our Twitter.